Are you thinking about buying new construction in the Denver metro area? Buyer beware. In this video, I want to talk about the pros and cons of possibly buying a new build versus buying an older home. They both have their pros and cons, but there's some very important things to think about before you go buying a brand new home. If you haven't been to my channel before, we talk about everything there is to know about eating, sleeping, living, and relocating to the Denver metro area. If you get a chance, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment below. I'd love to make you a video on what you're interested in. So let's get started on some of the pros on buying a new build. So first of all, everything is brand new and everybody loves that because it's exciting. It's exciting to go pick out all the new things that you get to put in your home, along with picking all the cabinets and the different pieces that you get to pick with a new build. The second pro about buying a new home is that the builder might have incentives to move inventory. One of those incentives that they might have is a partnered lender that might pay for some of your closing costs. Along with that, the builder may also give you upgrades in order to incentivize you to move forward with a new build project. Right now, however, inventory is pretty low, so some of those incentives do exist depending on the builder. Now let's talk about some of the cons of a new build. So one thing is that it's going to take a while to get that new build built. At the least amount of time it's going to take is 5 months, but sometimes it can take even longer. I talked to a builder the other day, and although they have the area where they're going to build, they can't even start building for 3 to 4 months out. So if you're looking for a place to move into right away, sometimes new builds aren't an option for you. Usually new builds tend to be more expensive. After you do all the upgrades and the base price of the home, plus the lot, plus all the landscaping and things like that that you have to pay for after you buy the home, to be more expensive. The last con I have to talk to you about new builds is metro districts, and this is a pretty big one here in Colorado. So if you don't know what a metro district is, before you go buying a new build, you should definitely understand what they are prior to buying a new build. Most new builds will have an HOA, and many HOAs have a very low cost these days because now they also have metro districts. Without metro districts, people wouldn't be able to do new builds because it pays for all the infrastructure for the builder up front. And without that, it would cost them way too much money to even start to think about building. Now, the disadvantage to people that are buying in metro districts is they might not understand the costs that it's going to incur with the taxes that are going to happen with a new build. So the thing is when you buy a new build and they first lay out all the numbers, like this is what your loan's going to be, and these are your HOA costs, and this is your insurance and your taxes. When they get to that tax line, this is where the numbers can really change. And the reason for that is twofold. One, that most new builds will have that tax piece on there with the idea of the land being assessed rather than the land with the property built on it being assessed. So the one thing I had one client, they were told their taxes would be about $1,000 a year. And when you're calculating whether you can afford something or not, a big swing in your taxes could make a big difference. And also taxes just in general with a new build are always going to be higher than they are going to be with an existing property. So just keep that in mind. So the one thing that the builder doesn't always take into account is that they're looking at the price of the property with the taxes just based on the land, not the improvement of the land. So your taxes are definitely going up. So that one client I had that had their taxes at $1,000 a year, their taxes, once I figured them out and got a hold of the Metro District and how they calculate their taxes based on their property value, would be about $3,000 a year. And then on top of that, you also have the Metro Districts have bonds that they have taken out in order to pay for the infrastructure, and those are different for every metro district. I'm not saying metro districts are bad, and I'm not saying they're good. I'm just saying you need to understand what your costs are going to be up front so that you're not surprised once it's been a year and you've been living in a house and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my gosh, I can't afford these taxes. So that is the other disadvantage of new builds, is just understanding those taxes up front. Okay, now let's move to the pros and cons of buying an older home. So one of the pros of an older home is obviously, again, those taxes are going to be lower than any new build, and most likely the price of the home is going to be lower than a new build just because of all the additional things you have to pay for a new build. Now that might not always be the case depending on how our market's doing. Like right now, our market's pretty crazy, so there might be an opportunity where a new build might be a cheaper solution, especially if it's further out. Now the other pro about buying an existing home is that your landscaping is all taken care of. So with a new build, you're gonna have to think about building fences, putting in lawns, and all that kind of stuff. With an existing home, all that stuff's done, and you might even have mature trees that a new build area might not have. Some of the cons of buying an existing home is that sometimes people have crazy ideas of decorating and they might not jive with what you love. So you might have walls that need to be painted, walls with wallpaper, and then there's also just the modernization of an existing home, and it really just depends on how much it's going to take for you to make that home yours and do those upgrades that you want. The other disadvantage is you might have older appliances and you might need to change those. With a new build, you're going to get all brand new appliances and most likely what you would like when you first move in. The other disadvantage of an older home is that you might have an older roof, and sometimes those roofs need to be replaced. Now usually in a normal kind of even buyer-seller market, it's not a big deal to have a roof replaced because most people that are selling their property have insurance and they can usually get that roof replaced if it was recently damaged from a hailstorm or something, and their insurance is going to help pay for that, and they can usually get it done prior to closing, and then that money that they need to pay the rest of it, whatever the insurance doesn't pay, can come out of their proceeds. So it can be a big deal, but at the same time shouldn't be too hard to get taken care of. There are also some other important things to think about. You want to make sure you're comfortable with your builder and that you feel comfortable with the communication that you have between the builder, you, and then hopefully an agent. Contrary to what you might have heard, it's still great to use a broker when thinking about purchasing a new build from a builder. You won't be saving yourself any amount of money by not using an agent, and that agent is there to protect you and help you. When you walk into a new build and there is an agent there to help you, but that agent is representing the seller, so you want somebody representing you. The new build has already set aside funds to take into account you having an agent with you when you come to buy a new build. So it's really to your advantage to have an agent with you when you go to buy a new build. A lot of times we've been able to negotiate upgrades or help with, at the end when they're going through the house and making sure that everything is okay and just negotiating that those things get fixed. So that's another reason to have an agent with you when you go through a new build process, and just having somebody there, a third party, to help you through the whole process and the process goes smoothly. And remember, using an agent to help you buy your new build is free to you. The builder has already set aside that money, and regardless, it's not going to change the price of your home. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're always here to help, and I'm happy to go through anything in detail about anything I've discussed. And as always, we're here to help you through the buying and selling process.